Hey everybody, this is Deb with Truthification Chronicles, and we'll be getting into the Assange things in just a minute. But before we do that, I wanted to show you a couple things from Twitter. And first of all, there's this particular Twitter feed here that, is really focusing on questions and polls to see what people really think. Supposedly, well, stimulating, provocative, challenging, exhilarating, and motivating questions are my goal. Yeah, well, all the questions are very biasly formulated. They are extremely biased. And it's not pro-Trump, okay? But patriots have been going to it, and they've been really hitting it hard because it's not coming out the way they want it to. Look at this one. Will Donald Trump have the last laugh? Yep. Will he? I said yes. They said no, and you'll see that no is 53%. But would America be a better place if Hillary was president? 57% no. And it just goes through and it has all these different questions that it's asking. And some of them you really can't even answer because if you answer them, they're like, they make no sense. You can't answer them either way. They're like gotcha type questions and they're not yes or no. So anyway, I thought it was very interesting. I'll put the link down below in case you want to go vote on some of them because it's not quite turning out the way they expected it to. And there is one question, if you scroll down far enough, and I don't know where it's at right now, but there is a question that asks, if the election were held today, who would you vote for? And last I saw, Trump was winning. So, and not only are they doing all these polls, this particular Twitter account, but also somebody named Bill Kristol. Now, you probably know who Bill Kristol is, and Trump has no love for this man, and this man has no love for Trump, even though he claims to be a Republican. No, he's not. No. And so he put out this poll, who is your favorite extremely stable genius? And he put people, and then Donald Trump's getting 67%. So people are saying, how's that poll working out for you, Bill? It's just so funny, they've got a ha-ha because it's turning out that way. And okay, that backfired. Oh, it just is so funny when they try to do this, but it all depends on who their audience is, And this poll back here, this whole series of polls, was obviously put out to primarily Democrats. And there was one poll that I saw that was asking if people are Republican. And it was about 2/3 Democrat or at least non-Republicans, and then 1/3 Republicans. So that gives you a little idea. But some of them have been going around and, people are passing them around and we're kind of helping to skew it a little bit and to give them a little dose of reality. And I just thought this one was too funny with the Bill Kristol here. Yeah, it's your favorite extremely stable genius. He actually then went again and put another one, a second one. And let's see if I can find that one. Here. Okay, who is your favorite extremely stable genius part 2? And he put these in, and still Donald Trump. I just love it when we show things up like that. It's just funny because they really are living in a bubble. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't understand that there are people like us who support Trump. They really don't. They don't know that we exist because they live in their little bubble and all their friends and all their friends' friends, they just don't even know that Trump really is doing a great job. Anyway, this article came out from The Guardian a couple days ago, back on the 19th, actually. And there was just so much going on this week, it was hard for me to squeeze this in. And I did a little short video of it, but I thought, no, I would really like to give a little expansion on it. So I waited until the weekend and tried to do it then. Things aren't quite as hopping on the weekends when it comes to news. Usually, we deal with what happens on Thursday and Friday, and then Saturday, not a lot happens. So, and Sunday too. Anyway, U.S. prosecutors to help themselves to Julian Assange's possessions. I thought this was an interesting article because it talks about how Julian Assange's belongings from his time living in the Ecuadoran embassy in London will be handed over to U.S. prosecutors on Monday, and that would have been Monday the 20th, so last Monday. according to WikiLeaks. Ecuadoran officials are traveling to London to allow U.S. prosecutors to help themselves to items including legal papers, medical records, and electronic equipment, it was claimed. This could be interesting. WikiLeaks said UN officials and Assange's lawyers were being stopped from being present. Lawyers said it was an illegal seizure of property, which has been requested by the U.S. authorities. The material is said to include 2 of Assange's manuscripts. Now, what kind of manuscripts do you think they might be? You know, is it kind of like biographical manuscripts that he's talking about? You know, what would those happen to be? I don't know, but it does mention 2 of Assange's manuscripts. And of course, you all know that he was taken out of there, and this is what they have to say. Of course, this is WikiLeaks, you know, this is people that are defending, you know, Julian Assange. It is extremely worrying that Ecuador has proceeded with the search and seizure of property, documents, information, and other material belonging to the defense of Julian Assange, which Ecuador arbitrarily confiscated so that these can be handed over to the agent of political persecution against him, the United States. Now, it seems to me, though, if you are residing inside an embassy, that anything that's in that embassy isn't really, you know, necessarily yours. I would think the embassy would have a right to turn that over to the authorities if they so desired, because it's like in their property. So I know it's not their property specifically, but if it's within their embassy, I would think they probably can do that legally. But I don't know, and some of it has to do with what, you know, the UK's laws are on this, so I don't know what it would be. But the whole point is that they seem to be turning this information over to the United States. That could be very interesting. Well, you know, just the other day, this is the New York Times. Yes, folks, it's the New York Times. And of course, they're looking at it from a raising First Amendment issues. Now, yes, there is a First Amendment issue, kind of, but... And this was the 23rd that this came out. Julian Assange, the WikiLeaks leader, has been indicted on 17 counts of violating the Espionage Act for his role in obtaining and publishing secret military and diplomatic documents in 2010. The Justice Department announced on Thursday a novel case that raises profound First Amendment issues. There are some definite issues that are being raised with this. Okay, so I wanted to point out, now you can go ahead and read this article if you want to, but you know, it's the New York Times, so definitely anything Trump's administration does is evil. And so, you know, I'll leave the link down below. You can read it on your own if you want to. And by the way, this particular uBlock origin, hey, this thing's working pretty well because it even lets me on the New York Times site without having to put their ads on. That was exciting. So anyway, of course, WikiLeaks is going for it too from that point of view. It's the end of national security journalism and the First Amendment. And so that's the article that they linked to the New York Times. So they're agreeing with the New York Times in that. Well, here's the actual Department of Justice, you know, document, the press release. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange charged in 18-count superseding indictment. Charges related to illegally obtaining, receiving, and disclosing classified information. So here's what it has to say. A federal grand jury returned an 18-count superseding indictment today, charging Julian P. Assange, 47, the founder of WikiLeaks, with offenses that relate to Assange's alleged role in one of the largest compromises of classified information in the history of the United States. And if you go down in this, I think it's actually in a different document, so let me find that. When you read this, you can go down to the bottom, and here are the links to these other documents too. And this is the actual indictment here, and you can see the different counts that he is being charged with. So there are the counts. And it says, you know, it goes through and it tells Assange and WikiLeaks repeatedly encouraged sources with access to classified information to steal and provide it to WikiLeaks to disclose. So they are kind of going at it from this point of view. But if you look at this, this was the press release that they put out, and I believe they had a short briefing. I didn't watch the actual video for it. I didn't find that. But this is from the Assistant Attorney General for National Security, who is John Demers. And yeah, Today, we announced that a grand jury in the Eastern District of Virginia has returned an indictment with 17 additional felony charges against WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. And this was on the 23rd when this came out, May 23rd, which was Thursday. And so if you go down here, in 2013, Manning was convicted by court-martial for offenses that involved violations of his military oath to protect and defend the United States. As you know, he provided Julian Assange and WikiLeaks with hundreds of thousands of pages of national defense information. The indictment today charges Julian Assange for his alleged complicity in Manning's actions, including his explicit solicitation of classified information and his encouraging him to remove classified information from U.S. systems and send it to him. The indictment also charges Assange for his posting of a narrow subset of classified documents on WikiLeaks that allegedly identified the names of human sources, including local Afghans and Iraqis who were assisting U.S. forces in theater, and those of journalists, religious leaders, human rights advocates, and political dissidents living in repressed regimes. Assange thereby is alleged to have created grave and imminent risk to their lives and liberty. And this is really the charge that he is being held on. Now, I understand that the free press has to have the ability to be able to put out documents that they receive. However, I think we need to think this through, because in this case, Julian Assange got classified material that endangered these people. These people's lives were put at risk because of him publishing it. Because it was like, all of a sudden, the bad guys running the regime knew that they were what they were doing. And so they could be targeted. And I don't know if any of them actually lost their lives from this, but this is, a serious thing that goes on. And so this is really what they're focusing on with Assange. And I would assume that if there are 18 counts total, that probably there were 18 different people that were exposed. Like it says here, that they had a grave and imminent risk to their lives and liberty. And so if there were 18 different people, then that would probably stand for the different charges. But I'm not sure on that, if that's how they worked it or not. But it seems like that might be what it was. Anyway, so this is the whole statement here. And, it just goes through and it says, the department takes seriously the role of journalists in our democracy, and we thank you for it. It is not and has never been the department's policy to target them for their reporting. Julian Assange is no journalist, and this is going to be the basic question. What really defines what a journalist is? Who is a journalist and who isn't? Am I a journalist because I put stuff out there? I really consider myself a teacher. I don't so much consider myself a journalist, but some do. And, if you're talking about the army of digital soldiers, then maybe in that respect I am. But, is Julian Assange a journalist or not? Did he play more of a role than just being a journalist? This made plain by the totality of his conduct as alleged in the indictment, his conspiring with and assisting a security clearance holder to acquire classified information, and his publishing the names of human sources. So probably had they redacted the names of the human sources, that might have been different, or not published that. But there was also a bigger picture here, because Manning didn't go in and pick out certain things that were, questionable, that needed to be exposed to the public. Manning went in and took huge databases and dumped them all in WikiLeaks' lap. That was the problem, that it was not just individual documents here and there dealing with specific events. It was a huge database that contained a lot of classified information that we legitimately needed to keep secret because it was part of protecting our country. Now, granted, there have been things that WikiLeaks did that really would, they needed to be out, those documents. But some of it, too, they stepped over the line. And I think that's what this whole thing is going to be about. Is this stepping over the line when you publish the names of human sources and you put their lives in jeopardy? I mean, this is pretty dangerous. And then it goes on to U.S. Attorney Zachary Terwilliger for the Eastern District of Virginia. And, he talks more about it. He kind of clarifies it. Let me be clear about what Assange is charged with and what he is not charged with. Assange is charged for his alleged complicity in illegal acts to obtain or receive voluminous databases of classified information, and for agreeing and attempting to obtain classified information through computer hacking. Okay? And the voluminous databases, that's a big part of it, I think. Again, like I said, I think that it was the volume of it, just the massive amount that Manning exposed, that I think probably is a big part of this. And so he goes on, he says, the United States has not charged Assange for passively obtaining or receiving classified information, which is what a reporter would do. You see, the reporter is handed the information, is given the information from a source. And so Assange was not just sitting there and Manning handed all this stuff to him. Okay? Assange was part of it, and that's what it says here. The indictment alleges that Assange published in bulk hundreds of thousands of these stolen classified documents, but the United States has not charged Assange for that. Instead, the United States has only charged Assange for publishing a narrow set of classified documents in which Assange also allegedly published the unredacted names of innocent people who risked their safety and freedom to provide information to the United States and its allies. These sources include local Afghans and Iraqis, journalists, religious leaders, human rights advocates, and political dissidents from repressive regimes. The indictment alleges that Assange knew that his publication of these sources endangered them. To be clear again, Assange is not charged simply because he is a publisher. In making any prosecutorial decision, the United States looks to the principles of federal prosecution, which provide that a determination to prosecute represents a policy judgment that the fundamental interests of society require the application of federal criminal law to a particular set of circumstances. The superseding indictment reflects these principles. And then, this is a third guy, the FBI Assistant Director for Counterintelligence, John Brown, who also jumped in on it and talked a little bit more about it. But I really think this guy in the middle, this was probably the best explanation. He's not being charged because he's a publisher. He's being charged because they believe that he participated in the hacking. He was the one to kind of push Manning to do this, that he was part of it, trying to push him to get these documents. Whereas if it's something, where he can't be charged, then it would just be they are handed these documents, and then it's not something they can be criminally charged with. But, even that, I think we need to look at the rules that we have for our press, because if you have classified documents, they are classified for a reason, and quite often they're classified because of national security. So I'm not saying the public shouldn't see things like that are classified, but then again, if they're classified, it's very possible that they could be something that's going to jeopardize the safety of the United States. And so we have a system that they go through before things are declassified. And we also have a system set up for whistleblowers. So if you're working in the government and you see something that's wrong that needs to be addressed, you can be a whistleblower and you can, turn that in, that kind of conduct. That's what Inspector General Horowitz deals with. Like, he's one of the top guys running the whole whistleblower program. So that's what he does. He wants people who have problems and who see things in the government that's not right to be whistleblowers, so they can find out what's going on and they can, prosecute people if they have to. They need to have people who will do that. But just dumping it over to WikiLeaks is not necessarily the way to deal with a problem. And that's what Manning should have done. He should have gone to the whistleblowers and gone through that route. And if he'd have done that, it would have been a totally different story. But it wasn't. And of course, we all know that one of Obama's official final acts was to commute his sentence. So, and I know people are saying her sentence, but I'm not going to, his sentence. So these are the documents, and I'll leave them down below. You can read through them on your own. This one's fairly short, but here is the actual indictment if you want to read through that. It is 37 pages long, so a little longer, but it goes through, and it's kind of interesting how, it mentions some different things. and that they're building the case. Of course, that's, what they're doing. They're showing why they think that he is guilty and why he should be indicted. So that's, what grand juries do. And so you can go through and you can see how this is one of the major things, that Assange solicited and helped to steal the classified documents. So that is probably the major reason that this is going on. And again, he's not really being indicted for publishing the material. He's being indicted for allowing people's names to be unredacted so that it put them in danger. And then also because he worked with Manning, and they think he told Manning how to hack into the database. And if he did, then yes, he's guilty. Whether, you love Julian Assange or not, he's guilty of that. If he didn't hack into it, though, and he merely received the stolen documents and published them, then that's different. But there is still the matter of publishing people's names and then putting their lives at risk. So that's what Julian Assange is being held for. I thought you might want to see these documents and everything, because it's coming out. And of course, with this whole thing, it's going to be interesting to see what the documents are that they get from the embassy, and especially what these two of Assange's manuscripts are. That could be interesting as well. But yeah, there's Assange, and we know that eventually, somewhere along the line, Julian Assange is going to reveal that Russia did not hack the DNC server. That's not where he got his material. And he's said it before, but, if he says it under oath, maybe it'll hold a little more water. But yeah, he did not get it from that. We know that he got it from Seth Rich. So we've just got to wait until it comes out in a court of law. That's how you get evidence out into the public. You enter as evidence in a court case, and then it comes out in the public. So it could very well be that in the course of this entire indictment, this court case, maybe they'll have to bring in the DNC server and have it forensically checked. That could be interesting, huh? So everything, leads to something else. I know that this appears to be totally separate from the whole Russia thing. And the New York Times article actually does say that it's separate from the Russia stuff. I don't remember where it said it, but somewhere in there. And so, they don't see it connected to Russia. We do, because we know the truth. And so one of these days, it's going to come out. I don't know the timing on any of the release of these things, because there are so many things that have to come out. There's so much documentation. There are emails about this, text about that. So much has to come out. And how is it going to come out? Well, I don't know. I don't think it's all going to be just dumped out at once, but I could be wrong on that. Maybe Barr will. He'll just dump it all out. And there's still things that maybe won't come out in this, but these things will then lead to something else, which will lead to something else. I was listening to Dan Bongino today, and, he pointed out that in the statement where Trump was giving Barr the authority to declassify these documents, it has a copy to some of his secretaries, and a couple of them were a little odd. One was the Secretary of Energy, and I'm kind of blocking on what the second one was right now, but it just seemed a little bit strange on those. And he was wondering if maybe the reason those were included is because this will all bring out the uranium-1 stuff. And that's very probable as well, because uranium-1 is all throughout this. And I don't know how you could have everything else come out without mention of uranium-1, because that's one of the reasons why Mueller was conflicted. He was part of that too. And so he really should not have been involved in this in the first place. I don't know when that's going to come out, but the uranium-1 stuff will come out eventually. And I think everything we're seeing right now, like the Julian Assange thing and all of these different documents and the things in the news and who's turning on whom, those are all things that are needing to fall into place. And they're starting to open up people's eyes to what's going on. Now, obviously, if you look back at this guy that's doing these, these types of things, at least the people who are doing these polls, still don't really have a grasp on what Donald Trump is doing and how the swamp is being drained. I can't believe this one. Is Melania a postcard picture perfect first lady? And 59% said no. How could you say no to that? I mean, the woman is like gorgeous and elegant and just like the perfect person to have in that position. But I guess everybody's got their own opinion, right? So anyway, I wanted to show all this to you. I'll leave all these links down below because we need to wake people up. It's time. It's time that this kind of question doesn't even come up anymore because it should be so obvious what went on. And I hope that happens in the very near future, right? And that Donald Trump does indeed have the last laugh. So I really want to see that number change because he is going to have the last laugh, especially when they're all in jail. So anyway, that's what I've got for you on this one. I want to thank you for stopping by, and I'll see y'all later.